everyone, Rodney here with Cleves Tech, and today I'm going to cover the mixing of AI with real photos and editing real photos using Fooocus. These techniques, of course, will also work with editing your generated images as well. The Inpainting engine of Fooocus is really one of its best features and the primary reason why I started using it. And yes, you can use it to edit real photos as well. If you need instructions on getting started with Fooocus, I do have videos that cover that, but it is extremely simple. Now, if you're not familiar with the Inpainting and Fooocus, I do recommend watching my other Inpainting video to familiarize yourself with the basics. Now, one of the big questions I'm going to cover first is I see a lot of people asking, how do you remove something from images? I'll cover that first. I'm going to show it with a real photo, but this will work with generated images as well. First, I'm going to be running this just as the standard run.bat. I have turned off all styles, and I'll explain why in a moment. I'm just using the standard juggernaut. I find it's a good general purpose. Now, the reason I prefer not to use styles, especially at first, you can always use them later, but especially when you're removing stuff, is I had somebody asking about how to remove earrings from something, and they kept inpainting and they kept putting earrings. Well, it turns out that they had the masterpiece style turned on. And the problem is when you're running certain styles, you may not always know what's in those styles and what's causing that problem. Well, as we can see here, if I pull up the masterpiece style, listed in here is earrings. So every time they were regenerating, they keep getting earrings because that's what's listed in here. So be aware of that, and it's best to work without styles, especially at first, or if you're having any issues. If you're not having any issues, then fine, use the styles, it works. So we're gonna also be turning on the input image area here. Well, we're gonna be using the InPaint section. As I mentioned, one of my biggest questions I get is, how do you remove something? And besides what I mentioned before, if you're having problems with the styles, a lot of times is how you're doing it and how you approach it. So I'm gonna use this image here as an actual image I found stock photos. And a lot of times people just wanna remove a person, for example. So in this one, they'll mask over, let's say, the person. So let's go over and mask this person out. What a lot of people will do at this point is they might go down and hit the modify content, and then they'll say remove. That's not going to do anything. Erase. That's not going to do anything either, because that's not how that works. All I'm going to put in here is empty beach, because I want it to be an empty beach. I don't need to mention these other people because it's not generating that area. So by putting empty beach in there, that's going to be probably the best way to actually get what I want. So I'll go ahead and generate that. Okay, and we have our empty beach. Now, I will mention, I did not resize this image or anything like that. I think the original image is, well, yeah, the original image is like 5,000 by 2845, which is not an issue because what happens is Fooocus is just working on that area there. So that's not actually an issue with the image, but sometimes you may want to resize it a little bit to get things to match better. Let's pull up that image to see how that came out. Overall, it blends in pretty well. You can see that it's not quite as clear. Now, what I can do is resize that image before I do it to get a better match on some of that sort of stuff, to find what works best. A little bit of trial and error, but overall, that's how that works. Now, something that a lot of people will try to do is to use the modify content instead to remove, but that doesn't always work. Now, I'm going to show you just to give you an idea. Let's say we actually went to the modify content and I put empty beach here. This is probably not going to do what I expect because I don't totally prep ahead of time on all these things. I don't make everything go perfectly for myself. Probably should. It would make things a lot easier when I'm editing these videos, but okay, well, I think you see the results that we're getting. So using that modify content doesn't work well for certain things like that. I do find that adding things, it can work, but removing things, it doesn't really work well for that purpose. Like I said, your best bet is put the actual prompt of like an empty beach or an empty table if you want to remove something from a table. Something like that. The other thing you can do if you wanted to, in this example, is if we couldn't get it to do that sort of thing, is in the image prompts, I could just put a picture of an empty beach here and use that as a guide to influence the removal. Okay, so now that I've covered the removal of things from pictures, let's cover adding things to pictures. So for this one, I'm going to use a photo that I took a couple of years ago up in Vermont. It's inside an old abandoned house of a piano. And so this one is black and white. So, and this is the reason I used it, to give you an idea of how this works. So I'm just going to in-paint a certain area here. Now, for what I'm doing here, there's two different options of doing this. And a lot of times you're going to try both of them because sometimes it works better than others. It's hard to say exactly why one works better than the other on different images. So for this image, I'm going to actually have a skeleton hand playing piano. So skeleton hand playing piano. Now, if I just hit generate, most likely what's going to happen is it's not going to blend it in perfectly with the black and white. Although the Inpaint engine does a pretty good job of blending things in, you do, if I want to mention that sort of stuff. I'm probably asking for trouble since I'm putting a hand in here, but I like to make things difficult for myself. Okay, and these two came out, well, pretty bad. Haha. But it did get the general style, which is what I'm trying to show here. I did get actually much better images earlier when I tried it. These weren't perfect, but much better. And as you can tell, Fooocus does a pretty good job at blending things in when it doesn't mess up. Just like normal generation, when you're doing stuff, it's not going to be any different. When using real images or generated in Inpainting, it's the same idea. So you'll obviously need to try several attempts. But as you can see, it does a pretty good job at getting it blended in pretty well. Now another image. So let's say in here, we have this old abandoned house. I don't think it's the same one. We're going to go ahead and remove this prompt here. And this one, I'm going to go ahead and use the modify content. A ghost looking out the window. Okay, and we have our ghosts in the window. I'd probably regenerate these a little more to get a better, I probably would describe it a little bit better as well down here and get that to blend in and look better. You get the idea of how that works. You could do it in the prompt up here, but you're probably in this sort of circumstance, you're going to get better results using the modify content because that's only a very small part. So if you were to put it up here, you probably wouldn't get it as many prompts. It probably would take me a few more tries to do that. I'm going to go actually back to this original image. So this is the original image that we actually removed that the person from. Same idea. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to put modify content. And that's all I'm going to add into here. I'm going to go ahead and hit generate. Okay, now we have our new images with our dog, which, well, that's a pretty good sized dog, I would say, but there we go. That one's much better. Now the other option here, we could do the same thing and do it here and go ahead and generate. Okay, now we have our dog with the people. Now I do find in my experience, usually this method will blend things in sometimes better as far as the size of the dog, where we saw with the previous ones, the size was different with using the modify content. But experiment to see which ones you get the results that you like with. They both have their advantages and disadvantages, but they do both work. So when you use the modify content down here, you do want to, I find, remove anything from the top prompt because it does intermix. So to get best results, this is how I would be doing it. Leave this prompt alone. Okay, so one thing also that I do like, as I've mentioned about the Fooocus Inpaint engine, is it's very good at usually blending things in. And so, for example, we can take this old photo here. I have fun with these old family photos sometimes. And so I'm going to just mask out an area here just to show you. I'm going to drop a car in here. Now, I'm actually just going to use the main prompt up here. And I'm just going to put in a Ford Model T black and white photo, old photo, faded, scratches, dull, blurred, vintage, damaged photo. I've added some extra weights in there. Play around with that to try to get the results. I mean, the Inpainting engine does a decent job, but you do need to kind of influence it with the prompt as well. Some of these don't work as well as I'd hope, but I can always add scratches or something to the photo afterwards if you want to blend that in. So with this one, let's go ahead and give that a shot. I'm still trying to find the best way myself to get the old look. I do get it sometime. As we can see here, I did a pretty good job with some of these, blending them in. You might want to go in, if you really wanted to make it perfect, with some photo editing, add some scratches and things like that. Like I said, sometimes I do get those, and if you find the right prompt, that might work as well. I haven't found any LoRa's that can help with that yet, but I haven't done a lot of digging. I, of course, could add a UFO in the background as well, which I did earlier. That's actually, honestly, what I do it mostly. UFOs and monsters in the back of old photos. Those are my big ones. So really, you can manipulate photos just like you would any of the other generated images for the most part. You can also use, I've used it as well for variations afterwards, but obviously that's going to change the image. If you're trying to actually get some pretty interesting stuff and you're not as picky about that, you can use the Inpainting to get a start, get something like this, then bring it over to the variation and do what you want to do with the variations at that point to get the final picture that you want. Well, hopefully this gets you started with using Fooocus on your photos and having some fun. Don't forget, I do have plenty of other videos on Fooocus and AI as well. Do check those out. If you found this video helpful, please consider hitting that like button. It does help. At least that's what I have been told. And keep on creating and have a wonderful day.